Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Dr. Cutler. We are honored to have you with us in our second workshop for our music entrepreneurship competition. Our students, we have some students who are actually enrolled in the entrepreneurship courses. Others are coming just to learn and because of their interest in entering the competition. He is the renowned author of The Savvy Musician. Wonderful book. I'm showing them. I actually met him, I think it was the year you published it, back in 2009 at the University of Miami. I was researching for my dissertation and he was very gracious to autograph this book for me, so I still have it.
Wow. But I don't remember it, oh wow, but I don't remember it having so many tabs in it.
I know, right?
Very colorful.
I know. So anyway, we're thrilled that you are joining us today, and especially that you will be coming in a few months to be the judge at our competition. And it's just a great privilege to have you, so thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you. And I have to say, I've never been to UNT before, but of course I'm well aware of the achievements that students and alumni and that community has made. And so I'm really excited. I'm glad to be able to meet with you. It's always nicer in person than online, so we'll try to have a conversation today. But I'm really excited to visit your campus in April, and I hope that I'll have some time to chat with each and every one of you. So please keep this a conversation. And I also wanted to say thank you and congratulations for deciding to be in this session today. This is a really cool competition that Fabiana has. Do they call you Fabiana?
No, they don't.
What do they call you?
That's okay.
What do they call the queen has arrived?
No. Dr. Claure, but Fabiana's fine too. It's all good.
It's Fabiana! Okay, Dr. Claure. Okay, I will try to remember that in the notes. So the good doctor, I'll call it the good doctor. So it's very cool that she arranged this competition, but it's even cooler that you guys have made a decision to at least come to this workshop. And how many of you think you're going to submit a proposal? Is everyone here planning on doing that? Great. You know, life is full of opportunities that come in your direction or things that you could spend your time doing. And I think, you know, entrepreneurs are those who know the difference between an opportunity and a distraction, right? Opportunities are everywhere, but opportunities only belong to people who take them. And it's interesting that the kinds of things that most people think are opportunities are often the elements that entrepreneurs run away from, and the kind of things that normal people think are distractions are the kinds of things that entrepreneurs often run towards. So you could be doing a lot of things today. You could be doing a lot of things instead of entering this competition. You could be practicing. You could be working on your solfege, which I'm sure you would love to be doing, or your Shankarian analysis, or whatever it is that you're doing. And instead you made a choice to focus not only on musical aspects of what you do, but also on certain career aspects. So I commend you for that. You know about this competition. I guess you guys have been through a workshop already. Is that
yes.
About ideation and the likes? So Fabiana asked me to chat with you about the plan that you will present. And if you advance to the final round, there are actually a couple of things, right? The first one is a written business plan. And then if you advance to the final weekend, there will be a verbal pitch followed by Q&A. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right, that's correct.
The good doctor for any of these things. So for either of those things, for the business plan or for the pitch itself, by the way, I'm speaking from my experience, and so, you know, different judges and whoever you pitch ideas to in your life may have different ideas. But I wanted to share with you what I will be looking for. And I will be one of 3 judges, I think, in the final round.
Yes.
So I don't know what the other ones are looking for, but I will give you some insights to at least what 1/3 of them will be thinking about that. So there are 8 questions that are really important to address. And you have to figure out how you are going to do that. So let me just talk through that. I think she has slides for these.
Yes.
But let me just introduce the questions, and then we'll look at each of them in a little more detail. So the first question, what problem are you trying to solve? You guys right. The second question, who has this problem? Right? Who is your audience? Who has the problem that you're talking about? The third question, what's your solution? Right? In other words, what is your project? What is your product or your service? Fourth question, what makes you different? Fifth question, how does your business work? And, sorry, good doctor. I just want to make sure that I'm describing this right. So you said these are supposed to be business proposals. These are not just an idea of a nice social project that we could do. These are supposed to be for businesses,
Right,
correct?
exactly, yes.
So, okay.
Revenue
Yeah.
streams, sources of income, things that can help them
Income
sustain
source.
their careers financially, yes.
Great. Not just a hobby or vanity project, but something that's part of your career. So how does the business work? The next one is, what's your financial model? Right? How do you make money? How do you spend money? The seventh is, what is your timeline? And the eighth is, why would you be successful? Why should I believe that you will be successful? And if you make it to the finals round, how long did we decide it? 4 or 5 minutes?
4 minutes.
You have 4 minutes to address these 8 things. But then there's some Q&A, so you might not get to all of them, so there's a chance to address them afterwards in a question and answer. So I'd like you to go through each of these questions and describe what they mean in a little more detail.
So I'll put the first slide.
So the first thing is, what problem are you trying to solve? Here is what I've noticed with a lot of artists and a lot of musicians, is that they really haven't thought about solving any problem. Have you guys ever been to recitals, or maybe even put one on yourself? And you just talk about, here, it's just the art, I'm just presenting the art. But there's no, it's not solving any problem, except for maybe your problem of, I'm required to do a recital, right? But it's not actually solving a problem in life. So it's important as artists for us to, just like any other kind of business, that it actually solves some kind of problem. But by problem, this doesn't have to be life-altering, right? It could be helping in some big or small way to solve healthcare or to solve criminal justice. But it could also be, here's the problem. People are too lonely. They don't have enough time with the community. Great, and that's what's going to happen. People are too serious. They need to have a fun time. People don't have enough excellence in their life, right? That's what I want to share with them, something like that. So it doesn't have to be life-changing, but it could be. Please ask questions along the way, or we can ask questions after.
Definitely
Okay.
ask questions as we go. If you have any questions, feel free to pause.
I know I'm always very interactive, but it's a little harder online.
Right.
You guys all look so flat. It's just like two-dimensional, like cartoon people or something like that. So, okay, second question. Who has this problem? In other words, who is the audience? Here are some bad answers that will get you disqualified. Everyone. Right? This is what I hear so much of the time. Oh, great, you have a show coming up. Who do you want to have come? Oh, like everyone, or like anyone, right? Why is that such a terrible answer?
Because then you can't market to one person's appeal, you won't get everybody to come in if you don't have a target.
Right? So you certainly are not going to get everyone to come in, because the hall probably isn't big enough for everyone. What else? Why else is everyone such a not good answer?
It would be hard to customize the problem solving. We have to know our audience in order to know who we target and what we target with.
Yeah, how can you find everyone, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't be all things to all people, and when you try, you will fail. So, right, there is no product on earth, right? I mean, you think, well, everyone has iPhones. How many of you have iPhones? Okay, not everyone, right? One flute player doesn't have an iPhone. Right, she's the rebel in the crowd, right? not everyone, I mean, iPhone is it's for Apple people, it's an expensive product, it's a certain kind of way of life. And even though musicians probably disproportionately have it, because we're like that way, we're iPhone people. But it's not for everyone. There are lots and lots of people that have Androids. And what's the one that, and Samsung, what's the one that catches on fire?
Yeah.
Right, so if you're a smoker, you don't need a light, you just have a phone. It's like, there's an app for that, right? So, okay, so you can't be all things to all people. Here's another terrible answer that I hear a lot. Non-traditional classical music audiences. Why? What is the problem with that solution?
That's also very broad, right?
It's more specific than everyone, right?
Yeah.
But it is broad. Here's the bigger problem. There isn't a single, in fact, it's actually, it is broad, but in another way it is very narrow, because I don't think there's a single person on this planet who identifies themselves when they wake up in the morning and think, I'm really a non-traditional classical music audience. Like, nobody identifies for that. I know we think, well, we want to reach out to different audiences, but nobody thinks, or, classical music haters. I hear a lot of musicians, a lot of millennials are saying, well, we want to reach out to people that don't like classical music. I've never met anyone who doesn't like classical music. It's not their thing, but people aren't hating any kind of experience. They just do the thing that feels more relevant to them. But I don't know, people don't come out like, cursing at classical music or whatever it is. Although I did see a fist fight break out at a Broke concert once, which was pretty cool. Okay, here's another one. Women aged 18 to 65. Why is that not a good answer?
Again, too broad.
In this case, it's so broad. Women who are age 18 and age 65 are not spending time in the same place. So it's very difficult to reach them, all of those people, right? So again, it's a little like trying to be all things to all people. And here's the final bad answer I want to share with you, because it's probably the most common one that I hear, especially from people, musicians doing their first pitch, is basically people like me. So one of the things that I hear so much when we identify problems is that we identify problems for other flute players. Right? Now, flute players are specific, or whatever, other musicians like us. Flute players are specific, we know where to reach them, right? The National Flute Association, right? Or wherever, we know where to find them. But there are a couple of problems with this. The first one is that flute players don't have any money, right? So if it's a business, to look at starving artists as your main audience, that might be a difficult model. But the other one is that, so much of the time, I hear people saying, especially, in 2017, how many of you feel like you want to reach new audiences?
Everyone.
Right? More people that have iPhones want to reach new audiences. Right? But then so much of the time, the problems that we're trying to solve are just for other people like us, because that's who we know. So if this is anyone's idea, I'll just say I probably won't advance to the final. So before I heard anything, this is what I hear all the time. I want to create a website which helps musicians get gigs or something like that, which doesn't actually prove the value to people who are going to hire you. And so that means, there's just no model for that, no economic model for that. So, it doesn't mean that there is no place on this planet for products that impact classically trained musicians or jazz trained musicians, for example. There is, and perhaps you can find that, but that's a pretty oversaturated market, and it's a very small market. So, so I'm not saying that will get you disqualified for saying that your audience is other people like you. I'm just saying you might want to think about other possibilities as well. So here's a good answer. A specific demographic. Lawyers. I know what a lawyer, I don't know what everyone is, but I know what a lawyer is. I know where to find one. Just went to see one this morning. I won't tell you why, I'll leave it ambiguous. It wasn't that interesting, actually. But man, what was interesting was how much they charged us for like 30 minutes. That was $600. Whew, that's a good. So they got some money, right? They said, design a product for lawyers. Right? That is something that can be understood. And here's an even better answer than a specific one, a specific demographic. Like music students is a specific answer because I know where to find music students. Here's an even better answer. A demographic that isn't typically targeted for that. A demographic that suffers from the problem that you're describing, that isn't oversaturated with solutions providers. Cool?
Yep.
Is it okay? Okay. Number 3, what is your solution? So very important is, can we understand what it is, right? Sometimes I hear people say, oh, it often takes very long for people to get it out. So I would really practice this over and over. See if you can explain what you mean in a sentence, or certainly in 10 seconds. Sometimes I hear people say, well, it's complicated. If it's complicated to explain, of course, life is complicated. If it's complicated to explain, you're probably not going to make the sale, right? You're probably not going to win the award. I'll give you an example that just came to my mind. This is not a political statement. This is just an example, okay? When Obama was pitching Obamacare, which is very complicated. I'm not saying pro or con, I'm just giving an example, right? When he was pitching it, before it went into law, someone asked him to explain what it was, and it took him 19 minutes to explain it. Do you guys remember this? And he got hammered by the news, and they said, if it's this complicated, no one will ever go for it. Even though it was, of course, nuanced. But he had a hard time at first just being very clear about what the message was. So it doesn't mean that there aren't details beneath it, but to be able to explain what's at the core of what you do very succinctly. And beyond that, sometimes, and this might be in follow-up sections or another part of your solution, sometimes you have a great idea, is very easily understood, but then the devil is in the details. And so whoever's presenting it, they get the concept, but they don't get how it actually works. I'll give you an example. I was working with a team. They had, in fact, it doesn't need any explanation, really. Here was the proposal, which I loved it. Olympics for the arts. What do you guys think? It's a cool idea. I mean, even just those 4 words, you kind of have an idea what it is, right? I love this idea when I heard it. But they didn't have any details. So I said, well, who's going to participate, right? Is it for amateurs or is it professionals? Is it local or is it national or is it international or regional, right? How many events are there? They didn't know how it would work. So even though the concept was great and easy to understand, the execution of it had not been thought through. And good doctor, I don't know how detailed do you expect them to know about?
That's fine. You're doing great. We're great.
No, I mean, but what is your expectation for them? I mean,
well, I put these first sections in the initial summary of the business plan. So the business plan has a summary section right at the beginning where these 3 items need to be addressed right at the top. So the rest is the details and the explanation on how all of that will happen. But these first questions, what is the problem and who are your audience members and what is the solution, are like the first things that need to be addressed right off the bat to begin the conversation. So that's something that will be, important.
so you'll figure out, how much you know about it. But in any kind of venture, whether you win the competition or not, the more work you do on the front end, even though life often doesn't work out according to plan, but the more you figured it out on the front end, the better it will go down the road. Like it's like if you teach a class, you have a syllabus, and you don't have any schedule, it gets really tricky when you're in actually doing it. But if you can really think things through, and this happens here, and this happens here, the class will probably run smoother, even though you might have to change things during the semester, especially the first time you do something. Cool? Okay, number 4. What makes you different? This is very difficult for many musicians, especially classically trained musicians. Can I ask how many, I know UNT is a big jazz school, how many of you are have a classical background? And how many of you have a jazz background? Okay, cool. It's hard in a jazz background too, but it's really hard in a classical background, because the 20th century question we asked, and in many of those worlds, was, if you wanted to be a successful artist, the question we asked is, how can you do pretty much what everyone else does, but do it better? Right? How can you be a flute player, but a better flute player? How can you be a jazz guitarist, but play a little faster, a little bit hipper, a little bit more sharp buttons or whatever? How do you, basically, most classical pianists, right? I'm a pianist. Like, the question they were doing, everyone plays the same thing. In fact, on a lot of recitals in schools, even today, you're required to play certain rep. Everyone has to play a Bach piece. Everyone has to play a classical sonata. Everyone has to play a romantic work. And then if the school's really hit, everyone has to play a modern piece, like, you know, Debussy or new music, right? If it's really, really hit school. And the idea was that you should be able to do exactly the same thing everyone else did, only a little bit better or a little bit worse than everyone else. Right? Come check out my recital. I do the same thing 100 other people do, and I'm only 67% worse than the best person in there. Come check me out, right? That was the 20th century question. It no longer flies in the 21st century, right? The question is, what makes you different? Nobody can... are there pianists in here?
Yes.
So I'm a pianist too, so I empathize with you. There was an article that came out 2 years ago in the New York Times, or a year and a half ago. And it was talking about pianists, and it said there was a time where if you were a pianist that could play any piece that had ever been written, that was noteworthy, right? There was a time that if you could play any Ligeti Etude, right, or any Rachmaninoff concerto or whatever it was, that was really something to write home about. He said, but today, sorry to be skeptical, but I'm not impressed. He said, everybody can play everything, right? And he went through, or he said there are so many people, and then he went through this list of all these pianists on the planet who can play any piece that had ever been written, right? Essentially, it was there. He says, it's going to take more to get my attention, right? And then for most of us, we're actually not at the best, you know, it's a very flat world, right? Where all of a sudden you're not only competing with other pianists in your neighborhood, everyone is on YouTube. So you're competing with every other pianist, living or dead, right, who's ever been recorded. It takes something different. So this means you have to know what other people have done. So that's definitely a question. What's different about what you did? Now, it's possible to have a successful venture that is not different. There are a lot of piano teaching or, you know, music lesson studios, and people make a pretty good living. And they're nothing noteworthy, but they are really good teachers, right? They're not different teachers, but they teach really well. And there is a place for that. But in a venture competition where we're cultivating entrepreneurs, I will be looking for projects that are trying something a little bit different. And I don't know if the other judges will be, but that's something I will be looking for. Is that scary or is that okay?
It's fine.
They're ready for it.
Cool. Okay, so, number 5. How does business work? And I was debating over whether or not to put this plan in, but I saw in this business plan that there are some things about operations, so I wanted to address this. A lot of times, you know, you might understand exactly what it is you want to do. Like you want to make a recording. Great, you know exactly what's on the recording, but what do you actually need to do to make the recording and get it out to the world, right? And not everybody knows that. So within any business, one part of this is, what are the key activities that you do? And by key activities, I mean, what do you spend your time doing? Are you practicing? Are you marketing? Are you setting up a website, right? Are you doing logistics, planning for it? Are you setting up the venue? What are your key activities? And then, and by the way, did you say you did a business model canvas with them?
Yes, last time, our first workshop, yes.
So, how many of you were at the first workshop? I heard it was amazing, way better than this one. So, but on the business model canvas, I don't know if there's one in that room right now for you guys to look at, but 2 of the areas you'll know are key activities and key resources. Do you remember these? right? So that's what key activities means. What do you do? And key resources means what do you need access to, right? What resources do you need? And under this I put, because I saw it on the plan also, to think about what is the long-term vision for this? Is it going to grow over time? And also to understand I'm not sure this is the best place for it, but what risks do you have? What are obstacles to making this dream come true? Right? How will your business work? And why might it not work? Make sense? You got to answer all these things in 4 minutes. Good luck. Okay, number 6. What's your financial model? So on a very basic level, and I can go deeper if you'd like, money in and money out. On the business model canvas, it's the bottom strip, right? How do you make money? How do you spend money? And hopefully you bring in more money ultimately than you spend, right? That's profitability. Money is not everything, but money is important, right? I mean, did any of you choose to major in music because you thought that was a really great way to get rich quick? Any here? Right, probably not. And that's a good thing. I mean, most musicians I found choose music because why did you choose music?
Because I love it.
Yeah, because something that you dig, right? Anyone else feel that way?
Yeah.
That's great, and that's important. A lot of people make lots of money and hate their jobs or hate their life. That's not a good way to live. But money is important. It costs money. If any of you want, do we have any like cellists or do we have we don't have string players? Do we have string players? What do you play?
Yes.
Double bass.
Double bass. How much is a double bass?
I mean, depends if you want to get one, it's probably around 30 grand.
That's expensive. Like, to think about money, well, let me put it this way. That might not be expensive to a violin player, but that's expensive to a flute player, right? Flutes are cheap. Flutes are only like, what, $5,000 for a really nice flute, right?
How much?
How much are flutes? You can get like a trumpet for $3,000 that supposedly is pretty good.
Like 7 or...
All relative. Anyway, the point is, right, it's expensive to have a bass. Wouldn't it be a shame if you have all of this great art to bring to the world, but you can't make a financial model, so you can't actually have an instrument to share your art with? That would be a travesty, right? So if you want to have kids, that costs something. You don't have to want to have kids, but if you do, you shouldn't have to sacrifice what you do in order to do that. If you have important work, there is no glory in an A-level orchestra that goes bankrupt. There is nothing noble about that happening. But we're seeing orchestras go out of business all over the place, right? That is not something to be proud about. We have to get, now, if you sell your soul to, if you have no integrity to what you do, that's probably not something to be proud of either. But they're both important. So to understand how that works. And here's something that I'll tell you, but you probably won't believe me. But it's true. What's a lot of money to musicians and what's a lot of money to everyone else is not the same thing. Right? So I see so much of the time, I'll tell you, I had some students, we had a venture competition at my school, but across the whole university, not just for music. And I had a group enter, and they were out with all these business groups, and there was one music group for a project called Project Opera Camp. And the idea was to bring music and life experiences to underserved youth, basically by putting on an opera. So I told them that what I just told you, that what's a lot of money for us and everyone else is not, we're not on the same playing field, but they didn't believe me. So they got to the question and answer. This was for a $25,000 award, okay? $25,000 is what they're competing for. And the judge said, well, how much would it cost to put on a camp? And they said, well, absolute maximum, it would be $9,000, but I can get the musicians to work for free and bring it down to $6,000. And I thought they lost it at that moment. All the other teams were like, well, by year 3, we're going to be at $52 million, or whatever it is. These are numbers we have never pronounced as musicians, right? They're not going to make $52 million or whatever it is, but we can be our own worst enemy by undervaluing what we do, right? So what I find in a lot of projections by musicians is this is not something that many of us tend to be good at. The numbers can be very unrealistic, but a lot of times we lowball ourselves. Like when I ask people, well, what kind of salary would you like to earn? Like in your dream, what would you like to earn? And I'll have people be like, $30,000. I asked you for your dream. We'll figure out, start with a dream. We'll figure out a path to get there. But they already compromised it because they're like, there's no way I could get there. So figure out what it is you want to do. There are many solutions to just about every puzzle. So, okay, number 7. What's your timeline? To kind of figure out, how long will it take you to bring this project to market? If you're putting together a show, how long is it going to take you? If you're making a recording, if you're putting together, I have a student that did a great project called the concert truck. So the idea is that they have actually converted a truck into a venue and they bring it all over the country. And it's interesting, right? They drive it around, they go to different kinds of communities, they video it all, there's all kinds of great stuff about it. But it takes time and money, you have to raise money, you have to build it, you have to test it, do all those things. So how long will it take? And I saw timeline was on the plan that you guys have. So kind of figure out what are all of the activities that I'm going to have to do and figure out what it is. I'll tell you, for me, what I try to do in my own life in both finance and time management, so financial management and time management, is that I try to be conservative in this sense. That with money, I try to underestimate revenue and overestimate expenses, right? Because I like to beat my goals. So what a lot of people do is that they forget about really important expenses, and then they say, oh yeah, usually I'm going to make it to this place, and then it comes out and they miss their goals or whatever it is, right? So I try to, if I'm trying to get to whatever, $100,000 or whatever number it is, I might actually make a path to $125,000 so that I can fail and still succeed. Right? And same thing with time management when figuring it out. Things will go wrong. Now there are some people, by the way, this is not a time management thing, but some people, for most people, how long do things take? Like how long does it take to complete a project?
It depends on the scale, I suppose.
Sometimes, but usually it's the same amount of time.
6 months a year?
6 months. Most projects take 6 months. No. It's a good guess. Thank you for guessing. How long do most projects take? As long as you have. Right? As long as you have. So if you have 6 months, you're going to get it done the night before. If you have 2 years, you're going to get it done the night before. If you have 1 week, you're going to get it done the night before. Some people, and I try to be this person, have the ability to complete tasks before the deadline. But most people do not that I have met, especially musicians, right? Most people are not capable of doing something until the deadline is there, and they do it either right before, or right when it's due, or sometimes right after it's due. So for that reason, it's important to set up, can anyone relate to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nods, right? So to create along the way lots of deadlines with consequences. And a consequence, at the least, should be like, I set a deadline and I know that I missed it. So that there's a little bit of pressure. Because it's hard to figure out, when you have a big project, what do I have to do? I don't know, 6 months. That's abstract, right? But when you break it down, these are all the activities I have to do. And I'm going to set a due date for each of these things. That could be very helpful. The last thing, why should I believe that you will be successful? Or why will you be successful? If I'm going to believe as a judge, if I'm going to believe in your project, I want to think not only that it's a great idea, but that you're actually going to do a good job with it and get it done. I was just having a conversation earlier today. She's like, this person is so talented, yeah, but they're kind of lazy. It's hard enough if you're a hardworking person to be an artist. There's just no, if you're a lazy person, I don't mean this in a negative way, but just like there are better career options. If you're like a lazy, like become a Jamaican ship captain or like, apologies to Jamaican ship captains, I probably work really hard. What else? You know, there are lots of places in life where you can be like kind of relaxed. I was thinking about that for being behind deadlines, and you know, a lot of places like when you have a deadline, it's like a suggestion. You know, like if a concert starts at 8, that means it starts at 9:30. Right? There's no place for that in the arts. Not in America, I don't think. So, I want to know that you're going to complete this project. So, one of the things, how do you show that? Well, you show that through your passion. Like, does this person seem passionate about it? Right? This is about credibility. Have you completed projects in the past? You get stuff done. There are lots of people, maybe you know some people. Have you ever met someone who has lots and lots of ideas, but they never get anything done? 5 years from now, they're doing the same work that they were doing today, because they just can't move forward, right? Don't be that person. So convince us in some way that you're going to actually do what you say you're going to do. And that, you know, if you get 5, is the award just like a cash award if they don't have to do their project? It's just, is the idea just to come up with a good project or to actually do the project? Good doctor.
The award is for the results of the competition, so it's assumed that they will use those funds to launch their businesses or to improve whatever business they have, but they will receive the award for winning the competition.
So they're not required to.
No.
So my suggestion to you, you know, if you're going to spend the time on putting it together, you should pick something that you care about, that you'd actually like to. Okay. Before I go on, I wanted to talk about common mistakes, but do you guys have any questions about any of those issues?
I had one question about number 2.
Yes.
You mentioned marketing to a specific demographic that does not get marketed to, I guess. Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. Classical music concert. Who is the audience for most classical music concerts?
Classical musicians.
Classical musicians. Who else?
Old people.
Old, more specific. Old white people.
Yeah.
Old white people from a certain kind of economic background. Who else? Family and friends.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's who we know. So, and of course, that makes sense because established audiences like this stuff, right? So it makes sense that we would market to them because they have a proven interest in it. By the way, this is the same with donors or anything else in life. But the problem is someone who's a fan of something, someone who loves classical music, probably has a lot of classical music in their life already. So that's not to say that that's a bad audience, but with or without your event, they will benefit from the value of our art, right? And they're probably pulled in a lot of directions. So if you live in New York City, there's so much going on that for that audience, they have so many opportunities. And we guess even for you guys, there's probably a lot of opportunities to hear classical music, right? So if you decided instead, now if you want to say, well, it's open to everyone, okay, then no one's going to come. But you could sell out a concert in an instant if you decided that you were going to do a concert for dentists, right? Because dentists are very clear, easy to find people, right? And it's something that speaks to them. And I think people say, even if they don't have any background in classical music, or doctors, right? Because to say, well, and maybe you even design it, well, what's the problem that they have and what do they care about, right? So I did a concert for doctors, for example. I did a lunchtime concert, and some of the music that I played was the kind of stuff that I normally would play. I did a few things for them. I did one piece that was like a prepared piano piece, you know, which always amazes people because they never heard those sounds. And I called it open piano surgery. Right? I did another thing where I said, you know, I was very nervous coming to to perform for you guys because doctors are smart people. Although I have to point out I am Dr. Cutler, so
yes.
It's not very but I got nervous about performing in front of such, in front of all these doctors. But then I started to think, are they really good doctors? So I wanted to put a test. Under your chair, there is some paper and a pencil. The next piece that we're going to play is a medley of theme songs from dramatic, from medical dramas and TV shows and movies, right? And your task is to write down as many of the shows that you can recognize, and whoever gets the most right will be deemed the best doctor in the room. Now, the person who gets the most right, please understand, will definitely be the worst doctor. That has nothing to do with what they do. But it was something that was for them and that related to, and we built up trust by doing it. So to design a concert for dentists, it might not even be that different than what you were already doing, but by finding something that they care about and something that, that's relevance, the overlap of what you care about and what they care about. So it is way easier to market a concert to dentists than to everyone. I don't know, everyone, if you market it to everyone, you're going to have 30 people there. But if you market it to dentists in the right way, you're going to be kicking out people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, so let me tell you, I just made a list of common mistakes and red flags that I see either in written proposals or in pitches. I have 10 of these points. Number one, that you don't adequately address the points that we just talked about. Number two, that the problem just doesn't resonate with the judge. Now, no, you can't be all things to all people, and no problem is important to everyone. Right? You might talk about, impacting cancer survivors, and one of the judges, you maybe just lost an aunt, and this is going to be to cancer, and this could be the most personal thing, and someone else maybe it's just not their issue. So, you guys ever watch Shark Tank? Right? The judges just say, I like what you're doing, but I'm just not that interested in the problem that you're trying to solve. So it doesn't mean it's a bad problem, it's just not their problem. The third one, that I don't understand your product. Like, I don't understand what you do. Sometimes I hear pitches and get through with it and just have no idea what exactly it is that you do. Number four, having a weak introduction. So here's how it works with pitches, with proposals, like your written plan, and by the way, with interviews or anything else that you will do, and with concerts too. I make my decision, and we all make our decisions probably within the first 10 to 20 seconds about whether or not we like you. And the rest of the time is spent either confirming that belief or changing our mind. So in the opening, you can immediately capture our imagination. It's a lot easier because we want to like you. Whereas if we turn off our mind and you say the opening, I'm just like, I'm not interested in this. You're going to have a lot of hard work to do. So the very first thing that you do is important. We're not necessarily good at this. The very first thing in a classical music concert, right? When you have people's, let me give you two examples. A class. Do you guys agree beginnings, first impressions are important?
Yeah.
Have you ever taken a class where on the first day of class they read the syllabus out loud? Like, that's the first impression you want to make? Like, we can't read on our own, right? That's a choice. You go to the New York Philharmonic, one of the great orchestras on the planet, and the first impression, the very first thing that they do is what?
Tune.
Tune! How boring is that, right? You go to Cirque du Soleil, what do they do first?
Shoot somebody out of a cannon.
Actually, that just happened next door. Yeah, that happens. I'm in South Carolina. That happens all the time. Before the show even starts, they have pre-show. They're getting you warmed up. They got clowns out there. They got jugglers out there, right? They're bringing you into the action, so you almost don't know when it starts, right? They're building a relationship from the beginning. They're getting you hooked from the beginning. And people are there, but someone's chasing you around and playing pranks on you, and right? First impressions are interesting. So I'm not saying you should play a prank on the judges, but start with a question or an intriguing thought or something or a very short anecdote. Okay, number 5. It takes too long to get to the solution. You got 4 minutes and you don't get to the solution until, I heard a pitch yesterday. It was a 12-minute pitch. And they were talking about the problem. by minute 6, they were still talking about the problem, which was, I believed that the problem existed, but I wanted to know their solution. So let us know the problem, but I want to know your solution to that problem as soon as possible. Let's switch those. That was, I don't know what number that was 6, I think I can do 6 and 5. Number 7, sloppy work. People will assume that we said, are you going to get the work done? People assume that the way your work looks is indicative of the quality of work that you do. So for example, if you have a website that looks terrible, people might assume that you're a terrible musician, even if you're the best musician. Just because you've got like, have you ever seen those websites where like musical notes follow the cursor? Just by having that there, people will assume that you're a bad musician, even though you might be the best musician ever, or the font is too small, or whatever it is. So if there are typos, if you feel disorganized, like you didn't spend the time to rehearse your pitch, this is one way actually where pitches from musicians are way better than pitches from business people, because we know how to practice. Take it as seriously as you would with a piece that you're playing on a concert stage. Your pitch is really important. You should practice it for people over and over and over again. Don't make it sloppy. In written work, if there are typos or, it's not logical, whatever. Number 9, I put failure to address obvious concerns. Like, a lot of times when people just work on it in their head and they've never shared it with other people, they haven't actually thought of the most obvious problem with it. So then when we get to questions, they've never thought about it. And then the 10th thing I put is underestimating obstacles or overestimating demand. Like thinking that it's going to be easier than it is to make it happen. Or that people, just because build it and they will come. That rarely happens. Any questions about that?
What was 8 again?
Getting, did I skip 8?
I think
We
so.
just have a-
I'm not going to tell you 8. Let's see if everyone falls apart. Okay, 8 was getting bogged down in the weeds. Sometimes people get so specific about every little detail, we don't need to hear every little thing. Have you ever read someone's bio and they're like, well, I was born in this town and then I went to middle school. It's wonderful. I can get to the, you only have 4 minutes. You only have, I don't know what the word count on the plan is, but I'm sure it's limited.
10 pages minimum, 20 maximum.
We'll probably say more in 10 pages than 20 pages.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
They're good.
So I wanted to chat with you about one other thing, and then we can open up for questions. Cool? This is my unsolicited plug for something, but I wanted to mention it with you because I thought maybe this would interest someone, and since I'm not going to get to see you until May, and that will be too late, I wanted to share this with you now. I run something in June, from June 4th through 9th.
I'm opening up the page on a browser so they can see it.
It is called the Savvy Arts Venture Challenge. This is the coolest program with which I have ever been involved in my life. And so if this sounds appealing to you, I wanted to share it with you. And it kind of is an outgrowth. If you're enjoying this work that you're doing, it's an opportunity to go way deeper. So in a nutshell, what happens is the one thing that participants bring beforehand, I should mention 2 parts of it, is an elevator pitch, a 1-minute pitch for an arts-based business idea. Can be anything. Maybe the proposal that you do here, except it has to be new, not something you've already done. We go through a process, we vote, we form teams, and you spend the next several days working out highly interdisciplinary teams, building these arts-based businesses from the ground up, and then there's a pitch competition at the end. And throughout, we use all of the arts to teach lessons about business and success. One of many ingredients to the success of this is that our audience is really, really, really eclectic. Because one of the problems is, I find that musicians and other people, we tend to talk to people who look a lot like ourselves, right? Musicians hang out with other musicians. In fact, flute players tend to hang out with other flute players, right? Which, there are benefits of that. You ever meet a flute player, they're really nice people, right? But flute players come from a culture that thinks in a certain way that's very different than magicians, or dancers, or business people, or healthcare professionals, or whatever it is. So we work very hard. We have actually 11 demographics that we include in this. Is this like the collection?
We're collecting for later.
So we have 11 demographics that we work. So part of the experience is getting to meet these people from across the United States and across the world that are like amazing people. So it's a really amazing community. And we accept a certain number of people from each demographic, including students and faculty and working professionals and artists of other disciplines and independent teachers and all kinds of things like that. And non-schooled musicians and the likes. I've decided that I am going to give a full tuition scholarship, one or two, I haven't decided yet, I have to figure out the math. One or two full tuition scholarships to a UNT student to attend, which is $1,250. You still have to come and housing and find food, but to do that. So what I wanted to ask from you before you go, if that's of interest, it is June 4th through 9th. The way I'm going to choose this person is through a raffle. So what I'd like to ask you to do is, does anyone think that might be interesting? Something that you might be interested in?
We have the raffle ready here.
Oh, that's the raffle. Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yes, if you get pictures. We have all the sheets here, so if you want to draw it right now, we can do it.
No, let's not do it right now.
Okay. I have it ready.
But, because there might be some other people, and I'd like to talk to you about it. But if you put something in there, don't put something in there if you're not available from June 4th through 9th, and if you wouldn't be interested in the possibility of that.
If you're not
Only
available,
if you could
just
be.
take it out then.
Makes sense. So afterwards, if you put it in there, but you think, that sounds interesting, but I'm not available, or that's not really my thing, just take out, don't do it now, so I want to see who it is. It's like, but fair enough?
Yeah.
Cool. And then I'll reach out. I have to see. It's an amazing experience. And then if you're chosen, you can do it. And if you're not, if you want to look at the website, you can see we have a certain number of spaces that are left in each, and you guys would probably fall under the music student category. So we have only a certain number of undergrad spaces and a certain number of graduate spaces. So a really life-changing experience. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Questions about well, it could be about Savvy, or anything that we've talked about today, or anything that we haven't talked about today, related to getting your business plan together, your final pitch.
I'd like to bring up the financial templates, if we can, for a few moments. We haven't seen those. And we
Great.
can
I
perhaps
can't,
briefly go over those so that, they understand how to prepare that portion of the financials for the plan. I'm just going to open the templates.
Okay.
In here, there's a template for you to download, which is a very simplified version of what your financial models would look like to attach to the plan. We went over these. I'm opening up the template so you can see. We went over these with our students in our business courses last semester, but ideally you would fill out these 4 sheets. We have what's called an income statement, we have a balance sheet, cash flow statement, and a startup cost sheet. So these are probably very foreign concepts and foreign terms for most of you, but essentially, and David, feel free to pitch in as I go through this, but I briefly want to make sure they understand what this means. An income statement is where you put the predictions of income and expenses for your business. So how much revenue, how much profit you're anticipating, and how much are you planning on spending to run your business. And this can be for the period of a year. So you project in your first year, you can look for a moderate case scenario. You can have a very optimistic, and you can have a very, pessimistic. You want to be in the middle range. So you project in a moderate scenario, what is the income that you anticipate for your business? And then what are the expenses? And these are just some templates that are on these sheets, but you can add more, and you can change all of the different terms to adjust to your particular business. So it's a way for you to kind of map out the income and the expenses for your business. Then you have a balance sheet. The balance sheet shows the assets that your business has. So what are the assets that you have as a business owner? Do you have an instrument? Do Do you have music? What are the things that you have that could be sold? Let's put it that way, that have monetary value. So you can list all of the assets in here. You can also list longer-term assets as, you know, you have short-term current assets like cash, you can have long-term assets like equipment, you know, instruments, things like that, computers. Then in the liabilities, you put the debts that you have. And so here you can insert any debts that you may have that are going to affect your business. These are debts that are going to have a direct relationship with your business. So if you have a personal credit card that's maxed out, don't count that in your liabilities. This is specifically towards your business. If you have any loans, if you borrowed, you know, money from anyone that pertains to your business, you would put that there. Why? Because at the bottom, this has a formula that will subtract the assets minus the liabilities, and it will show you what is called owner's equity, meaning what you have of value. That's your equity as an owner for your business. The cash flow statement is similar to the income statement, with the exception that this allows you to see how your cash flow is going to look in your business. So you put how much money you're planning on starting the business with, then how much you anticipate in getting in revenue, what are the anticipated expenses, and this will show you the cash that you have left in a particular moment for your business. So you can do it for a year's period, you can actually go even further in depth and do it on a month-to-month basis and do a month-to-month cash flow statement. I try to do it very broad and general because this is very new for most of you, but you can use this and take it, you know, to even further detail. And the last sheet is the startup costs, which is very important because this will allow you to figure out what are the funds that you need to get this business going, right? So you have, if you anticipate to getting outside investors, you can put investor funding here. If you anticipate on getting loans, any other sort of funding, grants, and then what are the anticipated costs for your business, right? That you anticipate having fixed costs and then monthly costs. So all of this will allow you to see whether your business will actually be generating, you know, revenue. Or, and in the actual monthly costs, it's customary, and you can do it for a longer period of time, but this is calculated for 6 months because it is the assumption that generally businesses, when you start, you're not profitable right away. It takes several months for you to kind of get afloat. So you want to make sure you calculate the monthly costs for at least the first 6 months of operations. And that will show you, you know, what your you know, income and what are the costs that you're going to incur as far as preparing this. And so this is all template based. You can adjust this completely to your own for you know, particular business. We have a student today who's actually a bookkeeper. He has a bookkeeping business. And I'm sure that if you are interested in additional support, he could probably be available for, you know, consultation. Because that's his area of expertise. Of course, you could also go to Tal Arts, which is the Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts, talarts.org. And they also provide legal and accounting services for artists and musicians. So you have a variety of resources that could help you narrow down all of these financial documents as you prepare your plan. And I encourage you to look those up. So either through your peers, through your mentors, or going through Tal Arts, any business incubator type setting would be helpful. So, does anyone have any questions about these sheets?
Let me just add a few things to that. I mean, they're complicated documents, and probably, here's what I want to say. First of all, the first time that you do this, at least as a judge, I will understand these are not going to be right. These are not going to be perfect. But this is so different than what most musicians have been, you know, than our background. We are not accountants, and there are a lot of good points to that. But, so there is value to going through it, even though in most cases, my experience is that they've been pretty far off, but it's still valuable to go through that. So I think it's a great exercise to do that research. Second thing is, though, you're doing this for a venture here. These are things that you should be doing for your career, right? Your career is a business. In most cases, if you're a musician and you freelance and you teach and you do these things. And this is one of the things, you know, a lot of musicians struggle to make the kind of living that they need to make, but then they don't spend time on becoming financially literate. money is not that hard to learn about, right? It is way easier to learn about money than it is to learn to play an instrument. Way easier. But in my experience, most of the musicians I know, we just don't take the time to learn about these things, and as a result, we're not that good at it. It makes sense. You probably spend a lot of time on your instrument, and you're probably really good at it. If you spend time on something, you'll get good at it. If you don't spend time on something, you won't get good at it, right? So if you don't spend time on learning how money works, you probably won't be very good at money. But it's not rocket science.
We have
right?
a question from a student.
Yes, sir.
What resource would you recommend to get more, familiar with these terms and, what are you saying? Like getting better with the money and knowing the things that we need to know?
Well, I can answer it in a few ways. First of all, at Savvy, one of the assignments focuses on this. And do any of you know the group called Alarmful Sound?
Yeah.
Right, this is kind of most famous, like kind of large ensemble new music group that's out there. And the managing director of Alarmful Sound is one of our thought leaders. And so he focuses on this. So that's like a hands-on kind of training. I can send the good doctor some titles of books that I recommend. That said, I've looked very hard to find books for musicians that work. It depends. If any of you are interested, I don't mean for this to be a plug, but I actually think my latest book, it's called The Savvy Music Teacher, which focuses specifically on people who want to be independent teachers, which I don't know, as part of what they do, I don't know if that describes you or not. But one of the things the book does is it lays out a blueprint, penny for penny, on generating $50,000 to $100,000 annually while increasing impact. Right? And it's not just like, hey, do this thing, have a website, and then you make $100,000 or whatever it is. It's like penny through penny shows you how to do that. But I've taught classes on this before, and I try and find books. I have not found so many of these books are written by accountants, and they're just so boring and complicated, and they're hard. So there aren't a lot of, and there are even books like Accounting for Dummies, which we can be, but still can be a little bit, that could give you a clue, one of those books. There are some great money books on personal finance that I can recommend, but in terms of accounting,
I think if I can say
I haven't
something,
found good books.
I think one of the things that musicians have is a bit of a fear when they don't understand, because we're so used to having full command of our craft. We understand every aspect of our instrument and how it is that we need to do to play it, and when we see things that are completely foreign, we have a tendency to kind of block that out and not want to deal with it and kind of think that it's harder than what it is. And as Dr. Cutler mentioned, learning music is really, really hard, and there are not that many other things that can be compared, I think. And when it comes to learning finances, it's, I think, a matter of starting and just doing it the best you can and trying to present it and learning as you go. Not waiting until you have a complete command of it in order to do it. This is not a recital. You need to just put as best as an estimation as you can, learn it, and as Dr. Cutler said, that doesn't mean it's going to happen exactly like that, but it is an exercise for you to start thinking in these terms. Thinking, oh, I need to make sure that my business has equity, that I understand the concept of equity, that I have assets, that I have liabilities, and that I can balance those. And I'm familiar with those terms. That's really the main intention behind this. We're not expecting you to now become super experts in finances. It's just so that when you hear these terms, you know what they mean. Most of the times if you apply for a bank loan or any sort of loan or grant, you will be asked for these documents. So it is better that you learn about these now, right, while you're at UNT, and not when you're really applying for a loan and the loan officer is asking you for an income statement and you just look very puzzled saying, I have no idea what you're talking about, sir. Right? So
one of the things about money is that it multiplies exponentially over time. So I'll just tell you one thing really quickly. So just like, if you have a credit card, the longer it takes you to pay it off, exponentially, the more that you're going to pay. On the flip side, the sooner, like, you start saving for retirement, the better off you will be. And most of you, are you guys in your 20s?
Yeah.
Right? No. So if you are wise enough to start saving for your retirement when you're in your 20s, you're going to be way better off than if you wait until you're in the 30s. Now I have a bunch of data to show this. But anyway, there's one book when you ask about resources. So this is not about accounting, like she's talking about, but it is about personal finance. that I might recommend. It's by, do you know Susie Orman, that name?
Yes.
She has lots of books, but one is called The Money Book for the Young, Fabulous, and Broke. And that might describe the people in the room. Young, you guys are all young. You all seem very fabulous. Some of you might be independently wealthy, but some of you might have, do any of you have student debt? Right. That's why I say my hat's off to you for even like taking the time, because you could have used this hour to practice, to do the other things, to work on your homework for classes or whatever, and you made a decision instead to invest your time, not only in this competition, but hopefully in something that will really help you for your career and your life in music. So I think that's pretty young, and pretty fabulous of you all.
Thank you
Do you guys
so
have any
much.
other questions?
Are there any other questions, guys? Thank you so much for coming today. I don't know if you can see me.
Yeah, there you go.
Good doctor!
Putting all the slides. Thank you so much for joining us, and this has been great, and thankfully we are recording it, so our students who didn't attend will be able to view this presentation and feel as prepared as I'm sure all of you are feeling now. And thank you for everything, and I think we should all just give him a warm round of applause.
Very warm. On a cold day. Can I give you a ring a little later?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful. It's great
Have
to
a great
meet all
rest
of
of
you,
your
and I look
weekend,
forward to seeing you in person. And when is that? April?
April, yes, April 22nd, yes.
April 22nd. Great.
April
See you then.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.